Well, gee, is this the last day? Last session?
You can stay long.
Fifth? Oh, thank you so much. I wish I could stay longer, really. This would be so pleasant. What a place, this, the place itself, the environment. Oh, very nice. And then the fact that you can not only study to gain wisdom and reflect to gain wisdom, but that you can meditate here. This is the best way to gain wisdom. Oh, so you're so fortunate. You're so fortunate. Oh, yeah. Thank you. So, I don't know where to start. Oh, today I wish to say a few things about wisdom. Not to impart it. Get that? Not to impart wisdom, but to say a few things about it. But I also want to say a few things at the beginning, a little more about bodhicitta, about compassion. I have to be careful here. Oh. I'm hoping to draw in the Heart Sutra, wisdom, but I also want to say, something more about what is defined as altruism, but I don't know. I'll get this out of the way now. Okay. This is a book I mentioned before that I usually travel with. It's called A Strength to Love. It's a collection of 15 of Martin Luther King's sermons. And within these 15, and they were collected by Coretta Scott King after he passed away. They're really terrific sermons. Pretty much all the things we might hear, famous quotes from Martin Luther King, are taken from some of these sermons. So it's a really handy thing to, you just throw this in your travel bag, pick it up, and look at it sometimes. So there are a number of good sermons here with great practical advice, really almost meditative advice. Think this way, think of this, think of that. It's really quite remarkable. But from one of the sermons called On Being a Good Neighbor. On being a good neighbor, King talks about what he calls a dangerous altruism. I love it. In Luke and in Matthew as well, I think, but in Luke chapter 10:29, somebody said to me, "You like Buddhism because you come from that Baptist background and you like to cite chapter and verse." And I thought, yeah, they're right. I think they got some. In Luke 10:29, Jesus is being tested. And so somebody comes up to him, he says, which are the greatest commandments? Going to test him. And Jesus says, what do you say? That's always good. Turn it back on him. And he begins to recite, and Jesus says, that's absolutely right. What's the greatest commandment? Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy mind, with all thy soul. Right? And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. This is difficult. This is a difficult practice. I used to try to explain to some Tibetan teachers that it's a difficult practice because some of us don't love ourselves. So what does that mean, love your neighbor as thyself? Well, really? Really? His Holiness would say, really? You sure? People don't know about that? Well, so I was talking about low self-esteem, blah, blah, blah. Oh. But you should love your neighbor because you're all God's children, right? You should love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus was saying this is the whole of the teachings. At Matthew, 22:39. Oh, Jesus says in response, oh, the second is like unto it. Oh, love thy neighbor as thyself. Go away and see if you can do it. That's sort of some paraphrase. But on this occasion in Luke, the priest then questions further, well, who is my neighbor? Who counts? Who is my neighbor? First, Jesus says, the one whom you treat in a neighborly fashion, that's your neighbor. Ah. The priest, can you be a little more specific? And at that point, Jesus begins a parable. Because often when somebody's coming at you with this, I'm testing and I want the logical and I want this. Those serve as occasions when Jesus tells a story. So the man was so insistent. Jesus begins the answer by saying, there once was a certain man on the road, the Jericho road. And that man was beaten badly and left on the side of the road. And then, a priest passes by, coming along that same road. Now, when King tells this story, he, with all the fervor of a Baptist preacher, he's saying, my wife and I, we've been on that road. That's a dangerous road. It's filled with curves, and it drops from 2,000 feet down to below sea level, that road, the Jericho road. He said, that's a dangerous road. Got lots of curves. Got places where you can't see around it. Okay, so he says, I've been on that road. I know it could have been a dangerous spot. So here's this person bleeding on the side of the road. And at first, according to the parable, back to the parable, a priest comes by and seeing that man bleeding on the side of the road, that priest decides to cross over, go to the other side, and keep going. You know the story, right? It's the story, the parable of the Good Samaritan. Okay. And so that man.
She doesn't know her story.
You don't know that story? Okay. Well, I'm telling the story. It's called The Parable of the Good Samaritan. Okay. Yeah. So crosses to the other side and leaves him. And then a Levite comes by. And seeing the man bleeding there, that Levite decides that he too, he didn't know about the others, the man who had come before, but he too crosses over to the other side and leaves the man bleeding. But then comes along a Samaritan without a name. He's a Samaritan. And he sees the man. And right away, he goes over to the man. Tries to address his wounds. Puts the man on his donkey. Takes the man to an inn. Gives the innkeeper money. Says, please care for this person. And if the money is not enough, I'll give you more on my return. Okay. King talks about, raises a question then, by virtue of what do we call that Good Samaritan good? By virtue of what do we call the Good Samaritan good? He was good because he made the first principle of his life caring for others. He practiced a kind of dangerous altruism. King says, it's dangerous. Why? Because he's been on that road. Why? He says, I try to think about what might have been in that priest's mind and what might have been in that Levite's mind that seen another human being. He later decides they don't see a human being. Oh, they might see a trap. Oh, they might think this is a pretense, and they are bandits waiting around the corner. If they stop their journey and go over, then the man's, the other folk will jump out and attack him. King says, that might have been on their mind, Maybe I shouldn't stop because this might not be on the up and up. There's a guy bleeding, but it still might not be on the up and up. It might be a part of a trap. And then he says, now let's see, what else? What could a Levite be thinking? Well, he might be thinking, I'm late. I gotta get to services. And I don't want to get there polluted. I can't be tainted by blood and then go into the temple. King's trying to figure out what could have made these men cross over to the other side and keep going. He says, could be that. Could be that. But the Samaritan doesn't think any of that. He doesn't think this could be a trap. He doesn't think, it might be polluting to touch this person. Now, Samaritan is on the lowest rung of society here. He doesn't think, I wonder if that's a Jewish man. He doesn't go through any of these calculations. By virtue of what is he good? He doesn't go through these calculations. So King says, for the priest and the Levite, they had the thought on seeing the man. They had the question, if I stop to help this man, what might happen to me? But the Samaritan thought, only, if I don't stop to help this man, what will happen to him? That's the kind of altruism that the Samaritan had. He doesn't question what will happen to me if I stop. Seeing the man in distress, he thinks, what will happen to him if I don't stop? And so immediately he goes and, King calls this a dangerous altruism and suggests we all ought to try to live that way. The Samaritan was good because he made concern for others the first law of his life. Concern for others, the first law of his life. He lived by that. Here's somebody really living compassion. The thought for others. Tika. I love to hear, you can hear these sermons too, because King is a powerful speaker, and he says, and these religious people, both had the idea, if I stop to help him, what will happen to me? Rather than, if I don't stop, what will happen to him? I would like beings to have that way of turning the issue around. When you're confronted with someone in trouble, to think about not yourself, but think about them. If you have that as first, it's a good example, I think, of what bodhicitta or compassion really is. What compassion really is. The Good Samaritan reversed the question. If I do not stop to help this man, the Samaritan asked, what will happen to him? The Good Samaritan engaged in a dangerous altruism. And King says, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. Pretty good, huh? Oh, he had such good turns of phrases. I loved it. I just wanted to mention that that's a good example of if bodhicitta really, if compassion really figures in your life, then all the other calculations don't matter. It's the person in need who matters. Tika. So, it's a good collection of sermons. So, I did mention Nagarjuna's little saying at the beginning. And that would be Dharma. Oh, Dharma over material benefit. Oh, good over fame. Beings over personal happiness in secret. Secret. Tika. So at the end of all the various 84,000 different ways of talking about the Buddha's path, that path leads to and ends in wisdom. They don't just say, renunciation bodhicitta. And they don't just say, discipline, moral discipline, and then meditation. All of the rubrics, all that we can possibly think of in Buddhism, end in wisdom, right? Now, I asked this question earlier, but why is that? I asked about renunciation, but now I'm asking about wisdom. Why does it end in wisdom? What traps us in samsara? Our ignorance, right? Okay, so simple. It's like, why is it that, what is that common saying? When you're looking for something, why is it always in the last place you look? Right? Yeah, because then you stop looking, right? You found it. Wisdom is like that. That's what you need to get out of samsara. That is. But what is it? I can't answer that today, but we can talk about it, start to talk about it. So there's another group of threes. I began first session talking about there are all these threes, right? And there's another group of threes that says, what are the characteristics of samsara? What are the marks? What are the lakshanas of samsara? What are the chief characteristics? There are three. And what three? Anitya, impermanence.
Unsatisfactory conditions. Or dukkha.
Dukkha.
Selflessness.
Selflessness is what we want to talk about, sort of. Huh? Anitya, anatman, and dukkha. There are those three marks of samsara. Want to see samsara? It's got, dukkha, samsara. Impermanence, samsara. Anatman. Really? Three characteristic marks of samsara. Anitya, anatman, dukkha. we can see impermanence, and we can see that's frustrating, that causes us to suffer. We think that something should stay the way we see it, and it doesn't. It causes us suffering. But on Atman, we sort of can't see that. We sort of don't feel that way. And if we hear on, like not, non-self, not self, when the Buddha attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, he thought about, because he was omniscient now, he thought about to whom could he teach these teachings. Well, they're so rare and they're so different, and they go against the grain. Going against the grain in his society, even of mendicants, even of religious beings were firmly convinced that Atman was the fact. The mystics and the mendicants, there was Brahma and there was Atma, and ultimately we wanted to join them. The mystical idea was we will join our individual Atmans with the great Brahma, and we'd be liberated, vimoksha. So the Buddha said, from the space, from the Buddha Koti, when he was meditating, the limits of the reality which he observed, in that entirety of reality, he did not see Atman. He didn't see Atman. So the truth that he observed in his own experience was anatman, no such thing. Selflessness, non-self. He thought, after the 4 watches of the night, this one is the hardest, this will be hard for beings to grasp. This will be hard for beings to grasp. This goes completely against the grain, Atman. But fortunately, he decided there were some people with, who was I talking to? With a little dust. Who might be able to understand. The two teachers he saw had passed away. His 2 teachers, Alara, Kamala, and Udraka, they had passed away. And then he thought, what about those 5? Maybe they have little dust and they might be able to understand this teaching. Because the teaching itself is kind of slippery. It's maybe frightening. But shouldn't be, because nothing is lost except what's false. It's not, shall I say that again? I'm not a good poet. But nothing is lost except what's false. The only thing you're giving up in Anatman is the false conception you had before. The false conception of Atman. You thought that self was permanent, fixed, eternal, inherently existent. Not so. But if I denied that, I'm not denying, you're not going to disappear because I say that. Poof. Anatman. You check. Am I still here? Yeah, you're still there. Relative self, still there. Body, mind, ability to talk, all those precious freedoms, that's still there. Because nothing is lost except what was false to begin with. We didn't know it was false. We thought it was the most real thing. Me. Oof. Don't tell me that doesn't exist. Please, Professor Willis. Now in the South they call me Dr. Willis. Please Please let us hold on to that. Don't tell us there's none self. Don't worry so much. You'll still be here. You can still have that boyfriend or girlfriend. It's all right. I deal with that age group. That's really what they worry about. I don't know. This on Atman, I don't know. This kind of scary stuff. I still want to be here. So I try to say, don't worry. You'll still be here. Nothing's going away but what was false in the beginning. Oh. So Anatman, becomes, so that is synonyms. Anatman, or that's Sanskrit, and anatta is the Pali for it. Anatta, really. And shunyata, shunya. All these, or suna, all these are used fairly synonymously. So Anatman, he thought, maybe people will have a hard time with that, but he was a good teacher. Some got it. Shunya. Talk about shunya. Because one of the early sutras says, Sunna, 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 all is Sunna. Is that really what you're teaching, Bhagavan? Yes. Sunna, Sunna, all is Sunna. Theravadins, though, seem to take as one of their hallmarks of meditation hook is Atman Naratmya. The non-self of there's non-self of the so-called self. Maya, by virtue of being Ma, greater, just wipes it all out. There is both Atma Naratmya and Dharma Naratmya, small d. Absolutely everything is empty of this self. Shunya is the same way. All entities are empty. So the question becomes, empty of what? So you don't have to be afraid. Empty of what? Empty of inherent existence. Empty of independent existence. Empty. That's okay. It's not saying, we were saying a little bit of that yesterday. It's not a thing, it doesn't exist from its own side, didn't create itself, but came into being because of causes and conditions. Therefore, it is empty of independent existence, right? It doesn't exist independently. It doesn't exist independently. It exists in dependence on other things. Is this clear, not clear? Okay. So that's all that's lost. That is, we tend to think, that things are fixed. They exist inherently and independently, and all of that is false. And that's what anatman means. And you only lose a false notion about the self when you take up the view of anatman. You only lose a false notion of the self. The false notion that it exists independently, that it exists eternally, that it exists inherently. You only give up that notion. That notion was false. That's all you can lose. If it's true, you can't lose it. Don't worry. Don't know. I'm not sure I said it clearly. Tika. I've always argued in things that I've written that Buddhism is mainly an epistemological system, not one of ontology. The Buddha doesn't tell you what is. The Buddha says how it is. It's about how we perceive things. So much in all of Buddhism, from the first discourse on, is that that knowledge gave me insight, gave me vision, gave me wisdom, gave me. All right? And that wisdom seems to be it's about the nature of reality. It's about how things exist. The Buddha never spent time, as Malunkyaputta and others came up and had gripes. Well, I haven't learned this. I haven't heard you talk about this. And the Buddha said, did I ever promise that if you join me here, you became a vanaprastha with me, you came and joined the order, that I would tell you these things? Doesn't Arhat exist after life? Doesn't Arhat suffer pain? Did I ever say that? Malunkyaputta had to agree. Well, no. He says, right. I'm just telling you things that will help you gain liberation from samsara. That's what I'm trying to do. Oh, okay, all right. Nothing's lost except what was false. Anatman shouldn't be as scary as it appears to be. Oh, but even when Nagarjuna talked about this, you've read Mula Madhyamaka Karikas, haven't you? Going to be a teaching on that. Really? J. Garfield and...
They haven't had that contact.
Uh-huh. Nagarjuna wrote a text in verse, the Mula Madhyamaka Karikas, on root text. Oh, that's marvelous as a teaching on shunyata, but the term isn't in there. Oh, I think that's brilliant, all about shunyata. That's what it is. It's all about that. But doesn't use the term. But you get a sense of it. Huh? Because Nagarjuna taught that there should be shunyata of shunyata. Don't get attached to shunyata. Don't get attached. That's not, don't try to get attached to emptiness. Destroy even that till you experience the view. That's what's important, that you see without the falseness. You see without the I. You see without attachment. There is the emptiness even of emptiness. Don't get attached. Thich Nhat Hanh says stuff like that now. Stuff like that, excuse me. Mm. Is he well, by the way? Do we know? Still well? Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He fashioned these 14 vows, and one of them is not to become attached to doctrines, even your own, sort of. I mean, that's paraphrase. Even ours. Don't get too attached to them. Don't reify things, because things don't exist that way. So I was saying, I think Buddhist philosophy is mainly about how it is that we gain knowledge, how it is that we know about the world, how it is, not what we know. If we look at things, and we say, that always reifies things. We think because we know our language that we know what something is. Well, that's a teacup. That's what it is. But other people who've never spoken English, they come in and they say something else with the same kind of certainty. So one way of making an example of this is you say, well, it's not a teacup in some other language. Give me some other language for it. Right? Huh? It's a tasa. It's not a teacup, it's a tasa.
No, it's a house.
It's a taos. It's a taos. It's a mug. It's a pencil holder. Okay.
A home for a spider.
Okay. different languages, there are different ways of talking about what something is. But you would be in error to think that your particular name for that thing is the only thing that captures what it is. Right? We can see that. Yesterday I mentioned that Buddhist examples also say, depending upon your psychological state or what realm you're in, you see things differently. Right? Well, it's that same thing, but you call it something else depending on how you're feeling. Just a pencil holder, huh? Have a tea sometimes, Jen. Don't work all the time. So we're in error if we think that we can say with certainty, this is what a thing is. There is a common tale about, which talks about how we see things ignorantly and then how we wake up to them. Common tales. As you're walking along the road, sort of dusk, right? You see what's really a rope coiled there, but you think, oh, it's a snake, right? And only upon closer investigation, I don't know, I'd be running the other way, I'm afraid of snakes. But upon closer investigation, it's oh, it's just a rope. So you correct a misperception. First you thought it was a snake, and there was much fear. We do this a lot, not necessarily about ropes. We come in and we make judgments. We don't get as far as correcting the misperception. We do it all the time. It would be good if we could correct the misperceptions. But this is one of the key ways we get into worry and problems and suffering. We misperceive something, or sure that we know what it is, and then we generate all sorts of emotions about something that's false in the beginning. You please tell me, because I don't know, I hear it more and more these days, this idea, this acronym, this fear. False evidence appearing real. Do you know the source of that? And because it seems to fit the rope and snake thing. I mean, I don't know who, because it's on the web now, in lots of places. I don't know the origin of it. Fear. False evidence appearing real. I don't want to quote it too often, but it really seems to fit that case. And this is what we do. You know, we come into a situation, we judge it, all sorts of emotions are then generated. Huh? But it was false in the beginning. Yeah, but this is how we run our lives. You have to come up with, that's RF, what? Is it an AA thing?
I'm not sure, but a friend.
Actually, like many years ago, a friend told me this acronym, so it's been way around before all the fake news now.
Oh.
Yeah. And for some reason, I thought it could be connected with AA, but don't quote me on that. So erase. But
I don't know.
But it's very old.
Uh-huh. Okay, well, we'll just say that is apropos of this rope snake thing. But it's a good example for showing how it is that people trap themselves in suffering. You know, we make a determination, we judge it, emotions are generated. We never saw the real things. You know, like, oh, girl, he's perfect. You know, we over-exaggerate something. It was just a rope. Hmm? It wasn't a snake. You're running, you're getting all excited, and come on, I'll show you. It was just a rope. Okay. All right, I guess you can. The good part about karma is that we can correct those things. We can develop. We can learn from that. We can learn from that. Mm. Nothing's lost except what's false. Could we train ourselves so that we don't make those judgments and stick to them right away? Would be good if we could. So, yesterday I mentioned Donovan's song. The Zen saying, first there's a mountain, then there isn't, then there is. Which is about the development of awareness. Going into a thing, understanding it. The mountain is solid and hard, and it's a mountain. I've seen mountains before, and that is certainly a mountain. But somehow we think it's solid, going to be there forever, even though we know geology and we know things change over millions of years and all of that. And then somebody like Nagarjuna comes along and says, Shunyata, without saying Shunyata, and we get frightened. Oh, my little self. Ooh, don't try to take this away. This is mine. I love it. Don't tell me Anatman. I don't want to hear that. You are mistaken, I assure you. This is mine. This is mine. Let's look a bit at the Heart Sutra. Maybe this will come together. I don't know. We read the Heart Sutra, right? Take a So, just generally, you think of the Heart Sutra, what do you think about it? What is it talking about? The Heart Sutra. Why is it read in all Mayan establishments, sometimes continuously, 24/7? Without pause. Why is it such a precious text? What do you think it's teaching? Yes. Okay, it's teaching emptiness. How?
So it's teaching the entire path. When you the obvious part is, no eye, no ear, no nose, that part. But when you look at the whole thing, it's teaching this entire path of Bodhisattva path.
All the elements are there.
Yeah.
Four Noble Truths, the sensory, how knowledge occurs, blah, blah, blah. But there are all these no's, what is this, is no this, and what is that? What do you think is going on there? Huh?
I think it's kind of telling you whatever you can think of, whatever comes into your mind, it is empty.
So, I thought you were going to say whatever comes into your mind is not that.
Oh.
But okay.
No, I was going to say it's because there goes a whole series of things where it says no, blah, 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 blah. But it's kind of, you could keep going to infinity. It's just telling you whatever you can think of does not exist the way you think it does. It's
yes. Oh, yeah. Okay. As is my want and my penchant. I like to tell stories. Tika. It's important. When you read sutra, to know who the characters are. It's important that in the Heart Sutra, there's a conversation between Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara. That's important. There are, can't think of the author's name. There are some, there's a collection now that came out just a few years ago, Wisdom. It's called Divine Stories. In the canon, there's a whole group of what are called avadanas. These are stories about the characters in the sutra. they all have lives, some of them are miraculous lives and all. But that's what I was mentioning, I think yesterday, Venerable Sepo, that Anand was quite a character. I'm talking about a nun, but a nun was quite a character. He was quite a playboy before he became the famous Dada and the attendant of the Buddha. He was quite a playboy. And it's a nun who who pleads with the Buddha to allow his aunt, Mahaprajapati, into the Sangha. And therefore, it's a nun who, for 3 months in Japanese nunneries, certain Japanese nunneries, is worshipped. The pujas are connected with the nun because a nun is viewed as the first great feminist in those traditions. So it's funny. It's interesting to know that he began life as the ultimate player, and that he ends up being the ultimate hero for women. Anyway, if you look at stories that are being more and more translated, such as the divine stories, he's coming out with a second part of that, and he's translating Abhadanas. And if you look at the scheme of the canon, sutra, the Vinaya, the sutra, the Abhidharma, and you look at the pieces that comprise those in your library, is very good. Please use it well. It's a very good library. But get divine stories. I didn't see that one, and there's more coming. So there are these story collections. They're in the canon. These are canonical stories. And sometimes, for example, they talk about Mahakashapa, and they talk about how the Buddha got them to be disciples of his. When you see their life before, you see their life afterwards. They're really interesting. So, when you come to sutras, to know who those characters are important. Not so much to know the background here, except in the Heart Sutra, it's the dialogue between Avalokiteshvara, who's called Superior in this translation, but Avalokiteshvara, the great bodhisattva, talking to Shariputra, who is representative of Theravadan wisdom, the height, the pinnacle of Theravadan wisdom, Shariputra. But he is being counseled by the great compassionate one from the Mahayana. So it's a dialogue between Theravada wisdom and Mahayana compassion. The Heart Sutra. We're going to go to Ninja. What is it really? And then you get all this stuff. So Avalokiteshvara is, he's meditating, he's coursing in he's seeing all this. And then he gives advice. And that advice, as Cheryl said, posits things and then takes them away, it looks like. Well, but first we get this declarative sentence. Form is emptiness, and emptiness is form. Sort of an identification. What is form is emptiness. And verily, emptiness itself is form. Here's this thing, mountain, teacup, whatever, that is really empty. This is dharma, the thing, and dharmata is nature. When you can see both simultaneously, you've arrived. As long as you see them separately, you've not gained wisdom. Wisdom is seeing the form, the dharma, and seeing its nature, dharmata. And its nature is empty. We can say it, not so hard to see things that way. Superior Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the great being, always looking perfectly at the practice. He was in meditation, looking at this, looking right into the profound. perfection of wisdom. Seeing emptiness. Then Venerable Shariputra said to him, sort of interrupted it, excuse me. But all right, it's Avalokiteshvara. He is compassionate, yes. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, we can smile about these things. Oh yeah, cool. Excuse me, what are you looking into? Then Shariputra puts a question. How should a child of the lineage train who wishes to engage in the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom? And then Avalokiteshvara says, whatever son or daughter of the lineage wishes to engage in this practice of profound perfection of wisdom should look like it, should look perfectly like this. Subsequently, looking perfectly and correctly at the emptiness of inherent existence of the five aggregates and so forth. All right. The five aggregates describe a person, right? Theravadan. Theravadan way of describing a person. Pudgala. 5 skandhas. The 5 skandhas, the 5 aggregates. When those 5 aggregates function together, we, though mistakenly, we attach the name self. I. Really, the term is Pudgala, and it means what is puffed up. Pudgala is like a balloon, the air, it's just nothing inside. This was the first name for an individual, a person, what's puffed up. Seems like ego there, but it's just air inside, there's nothing inside. But these 5 aggregates functioning together give us an idea that there's a self. Because there's consciousness, first there's form, there's rupa, there's matter, and then there's these 4 other mental things: motivation, consciousness, feelings, sensations. And when those come together, we think there's a self. Theravada's talked about the self in terms of these 5. Mahayana's texts usually talk about 3: body, speech, and mind. That defines a person. A person. Body, speech, mind. Anyway, okay, so we're here in the Heart Sutra. And the first thing that Avalokiteshvara says to Shariputra is, subsequently looking perfectly and correctly at the emptiness of inherent existence of the 5 aggregates. And then, boom, where did this come from? Huh? His Holiness just wrote their book was just published on the Heart Sutra too. Your library has that. Form is empty. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. This is just dharmata. The nature of the thing is empty. There's nothing inside. And when I say there's nothing inside, it's though I'm concretizing empty. It's not that. It's not space. Space is like. Space is a simile. We should talk about similes soon. It's one of those similes. It's like, it's a mirror. It's a bubble. It's all these things. Likewise, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Still on 5 aggregates here. They're empty. You think they form something, but they're empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are merely empty, having no characteristics. They are not produced and do not cease. All these rubrics from Buddhism now, we're just going to start slashing them. Don't hold on to anything. They are not produced, they have no defilement, no separation from defilement. They have no decrease, no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, therefore, you go, what? Therefore? Therefore? After what you just said, you say therefore? At any rate, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling. This came out of his meditative experience. Therefore, these things that we hold on to, these things that we think define something else, then we get this whole series of no's. Oh, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no I. All the parts that Buddhism talks about that makes knowledge possible. There's no I element. There's none of this. Another therefore. Oh, because there is no attainment bodhisattvas rely on. Okay, if you hear this over and over, there's no this, there's no that, there's no that, you might think, oops, there's no place for me to stand. It kind of can get scary. When Nagarjuna first came out with, it said that monks were very frightened, and that the fear, that it took what he was saying as nihilism, things are empty, empty, empty. They took it that he was saying non-existent, non-existent. Now, you would think, well, you still get up, you still brush your teeth or whatever, you still eat, you still defecate, and Shantidev. But some people were apparently frightened, and they say, Buddhist historians say, not Buddhist historians, Buddhists themselves, philosophers, say, this is one of the reasons a Sangha had to come along, because Nagarjuna's teachings on shunyata and emptiness had frightened many Buddhists. A Sangha came along, and a Sangha comes along and gives a more positive way of thinking about emptiness. And some people say, if you're a Madhyamaka, they say, oh, those Chittamatrans, they weren't quite there. They might have, but they were mistaken. Oh, but others would say that a Sangha was a bodhisattva who was trying to give an alternate method, an alternate hermeneutic that would be less frightening to people. So he developed these three. There's not just relative truth and absolute truth. There's a place you can stand in the middle to see these things, so that you don't feel like you're just falling off a cliff. There are people who've written well about this. Tikaha. Well, what is my point? Let's get to the point here. So then all the things we've built have been built up, and this is how we teach the Buddhist path, and they're all said, there's no to that, no to that, no to that. As Cheryl said, because we don't want you to cling to anything, because anything that you say doesn't quite get it. That doesn't mean nothing exists. Just means a yay to it, a yes, doesn't quite get it. And a no to it, doesn't quite get it. And that's why the Buddha taught from the beginning the middle path. It's neither this nor that, but it's not non-existent. The rope was there. It wasn't as though you made that whole scenario up and then frighten yourself, though we do that. We do that often. But in that case, that rope was actually there. Something was there, just not as you perceived it. You perceived it incorrectly. You thought it was a snake. Tikaha. So don't hold on to anything. Anything that you grasp at is not it. But that doesn't mean you can't actually function in the world. You're still here, and I don't tell them that. Well, I tell them, yeah. Don't worry. You still have boyfriend, you have girlfriend, that's okay. I say to my students, okay. Tika. Therefore, there's no attainment, and the no's continue, therefore. Therefore. Then the mantra is to give us what? Protection from fear. Protection from fear. You might be frightened when you hear emptiness, 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 emptiness. Gee whiz, where is there a place for me to stand? Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the equal to the unequal mantra, and people have had terrible trouble translating that. The mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, since it is not false, should be known as the truth. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed, and this mantra gives protection from fear. A bodhisattva, I must have passed that, is a fearless one. And, he has no fear if he catches on to this. Taya taya gata gata paragata parasamgata bodhiswa. Gone, 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 gone. Too many gones in there. Gone, gone, gone beyond, gone completely beyond. Awakened, so be it. Okay, so it's hard to talk about emptiness. Yak, 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 yak. Used to have a t-shirt Tibetans made. Had 3 yaks on it. Said yak, yak, yak. So much talk about this. There is a way that we can perceive that we can perceive that we can have wisdom about the way things exist, and that will free us. They don't exist like so that you can say that's what it is, and they don't exist so that you can say that's not it. But it's hard to describe something when you're saying, I see that something, but that something is empty. Its nature is empty. Appearance and emptiness. There it is. It's difficult to say then what you see. And so, and so, many, many similes for emptiness we find in Buddhist text. One we read, right? We read a list this morning. Page what? Page 6. A star, mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. Let's talk about some of these. Because they're similes. In some cases, they seem to be similes for impermanence. In other cases, they seem to be similes for emptiness. I want to suggest to you that those are so close together. And remember the 3 marks: impermanence, emptiness, then dukkha, right? Okay. So Vajracchedika, for example, has I don't know, has all these in the list, has 6 images. But what are they? The similes suggest that, what do you think they suggest? They suggest my idea, and then question to you. Why is it that we use, that's not the question. What do the similes show us? So, a star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, a dewdrop, a lightning flash, a bubble, a dream, a cloud. What are these things? What do they suggest about the nature of reality? That was a big leap I just took. The nature of reality. I'll keep it the nature of things. What are these? You know, I look at my face in the mirror. What's that image in the mirror? It's a reflection, right? Is it real? Is it me? Who said yes and no? You tell me both sides of that. My reflection in the mirror, it's me and it's not me? No, it's not the ultimate essence of me. I agree. It's a reflection of me. So what is it? What? Go ahead.
Okay, your reflection in the mirror, you ask, is it you? I say yes and no. Yes, it is you in the sense that it is not other than you, because it is a reflection of you. No, it is not the pure essence of you, but neither is your existence in this world the pure essence reflection of yourself. It is in itself a reflection.
Wow. Got deep there. Wow. I thought you said you were just a beginner.
Baby Buddhist person.
Well, baby Buddhist. Good going. Anybody else on the mirror reflection? How come these are good similes? How come they're good similes? Stephen? Stephen, right? Okay.
Because they don't exist the way they appear. So the reflection looks like it's really you, like there's a person inside the mirror, but it doesn't exist like that.
Right.
So there's a contradiction.
Absolutely. Tika, yes.
For me, these similes, they appear more with substance, but again, in my experience, I know that it's very fleeting and it's for just a moment. Just when they appear to my mind, then it's not there also. You drop. Looks real, solid, and then you blink and it's evaporated. It's no longer there.
Impermanence and emptiness, very close. Impermanence and empty, very close. That's not me in the mirror. That's not me, Jennifer. It's me, but it's not me in that mirror. I'm standing outside that mirror. Yes. Everybody, please say something if you want to about these similes.
But that image in the mirror really doesn't function. So it really isn't exactly like emptiness. It's a simile, but it doesn't exist conventionally, and it doesn't function. So it might get you
Ah, needs grace. You don't use mirror to shave.
Well, I think it gets you close to emptiness, but it really doesn't get you there.
I can't grasp me by going like this at the mirror, right?
No.
I can use it though. More grace, right? But there's no substance to it.
Right.
There's no substance. But it still appears. This is how things appear in the world.
But it's not emptiness, though. It's not the emptiness of the self.
No, they're similes for
They're
emptiness.
similes.
They're not empty.
That's right.
Never
Right.
meant to be
Right.
emptiness.
They're similes. They get you close.
They give an example of how
Right.
it works.
So, the face in the mirror is a superimposition on a basis. And so we grasp at the superimposition as being the inherently existent person. But when that superimposition is taken away, all that remains is the basis, which is the mirror, which is a reflective phenomenon.
That's definitely true. But these similes show us that we can still experience those things even though there's no substance behind them, right? This is how emptiness works in the world. This is an understanding of emptiness. So that unfailing karma, it works. Our relative goings and comings, it works in the world, even though emptiness is still the fact. Emptiness is still their nature. It shows how, I think these similes show that we can actually experience things and yet they be empty. That's great. I think that, we don't go around saying, I see you, tree, but I know you're empty. No, we don't do that. Jeffrey does. Oh, okay. I won't follow that thread on Jeffrey. Okay. But these are similes for emptiness. So that it's Nagarjuna's, I think, saying that it's precisely because things are void that they have utility. We still can operate in the world, but there is the fact that their nature, the thing's nature, and as well as ourselves, which is the real scary one, is empty. It's empty of existing in the way we think. It's empty of existing inherently, permanently, independently. It's empty of that, and still we can move about and do things. And that we can do positive things. And we can develop. We can enter the path and go with it and make progress. This is a wondrous thing. It's a wondrous possibility. And also, it's the truth of things. So the similes, I think they're great. And they're different ones, and they're slightly different translations of them. But the idea is that they don't last, they're ephemeral, all these things that get closer to emptiness, I know that image isn't me in the mirror. I know it's not. But we don't often carry that awareness with us, We just engage with the world like everything is concrete. And this can be dangerous. I like the similes. Go back to them. They really tell you things, I think. Similes are great. Teaching us about how things seem to appear. How they seem to appear to exist. But we know when we scrutinize that they don't exist that way. Yes, Jen.
About the story that was told earlier about the Samaritan. For those of you who have not been brought up in the Christian tradition and have not heard that story before, are there those of us here? A couple? Okay. The thing about it is that within the Jewish tradition and the Torah and such, you are supposed to help people who are bleeding, but in order to go into temple, you cannot be defiled by having blood on yourself. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it's a Levite is a high-ranking priestly caste member. It's like a Brahmin. And a priest, again, is another holy person. The Samaritan, this is a story told by a Judean. Judeans were considered the higher group of people. They were the quote unquote good Jews. They were the top. Within the Jewish tradition, you had several brother branches of the Jewish tradition, and the Levites were of the top. The people who were of Judea were of the priestly class. The Samaritans, they were pagans. Mm. They still sacrifice to this day. They still sacrifice goats in their traditions. They put blood on themselves. This is considered unclean. So the fact that this Samaritan did all these altruistic acts, act very godly in giving of himself, and not only making sure that the man was okay, but the man, when he went to the hospital, was paid for in the hospital. If there's any more costs that he incurs, I will take care of them when I come back. This is exactly what this man should not have been expected to do. He was dirt. and yet he is the one who acted in the altruistic manner. That's a little more insight into that story.
Thank you. I think we better use the last minutes to, if there are questions or if there are comments, and then just think for the last 2 minutes about what we've covered. That would be good. Oh, yeah, please. Venerable Tarpa.
I've been wanting to ask you about one of the verses in Bodhicharyavatara, the one where it says, "So having mounted the horse of an awakening mind that dispels all discouragement and weariness, who, when they know of this mind that proceeds from joy to joy, would ever lapse into despondency?" I'm wondering if you have thoughts about this moving from joy to joy. Because it seemed like you...
What's the number? I think it's really...
Oh, I have it as 30,
so beautiful.
But I don't know where it's, even what chapter it came from.
A bodhisattva moves from joy to joy. When we're talking about, is it pleasurable to be practicing bodhicitta and compassion?
Yeah, like...
The image that's...
Because I know you reflect on this book a lot.
Well, I think it's... Yes, well... I think it's a beautiful image of how we might think from this side of it, not being, advanced bodhisattvas ourselves, that this requires a lot of me. This takes it out of me. That's still focused on me. But the image that a bodhisattva once doing this work just glides from joy to joy. I just think that's a wondrous image. A bodhisattva, one can enjoy this work. That's really a coarse way of saying it, but bodhisattvas enjoy. It's enjoyable to relieve suffering for beings. And also when you think of it in terms of the stages of a bodhisattva, the first is joy. Isn't it? The first bodhisattva stage, the joyous. I just think it's a good reminder that, we don't have to feel so oppressed. You can be a brave bodhisattva who enjoys, like this guy.
This is a perpetual puzzle for me, and maybe it can't be answered shortly, but whenever here it says in the sutra, form is emptiness, emptiness is form, la 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 la. Nagarjuna has said the same thing, la 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 la. When Tsongkhapa 1,000 years later said the same thing, why is this controversial? Do you know what I mean? I mean, Tsongkhapa too, he had to come back to say that emptiness and, in a unique way, emptiness and a dependent arising come to the same point. So what was the controversy about? I just don't understand that historically in the development of, he's saying the same thing, seems to me. Do you understand my question?
A lot of philosophers have said it. What price do we have to pay to get out of going through all these things twice?
I think the thing is everybody considers themselves as seeing, everybody says, yes, the middle way is that form and empty are not that they're complementary, okay? But when it gets down to really looking at it, at the time before Tsongkhapa came along, there were a lot of people who were interpreting this in a very nihilistic way, saying that emptiness doesn't exist because it can't be perceived, because there's certain quotations saying that emptiness, you can't see it. So, if you can't see it, it can't be perceived, then it doesn't exist. Or other people saying then phenomena don't exist. If they're empty, they're totally non-existent. So there was a lot of misunderstanding about it. So that's why Tsongkhapa kept on emphasizing the dependent arising. He wasn't criticized over saying that emptiness and dependent arising were complementary. That's not why he was criticized. Other people said he is absolutist. Okay, it's depending where you're standing. Yeah. And many people misinterpreted him.
And people still misinterpret him now. And the fact that he went to Buddhapalita's explanation of Shunyata, people, and that Madhyamaka view, people still say he was wrong. You know, Manjushri told him he had a vision of Manjushri, and then he next time he looked at his text, it was open to a passage from Buddhapalita, and he understood it, and he propounds that view. But lots of people think Buddhapalita was wrong. So, and that controversy still goes on. Yeah. You know, it happens in academe. It happens in Buddhist scholars too.
Just because somebody's given a correct syllogism doesn't mean that they understand the meaning of the syllogism properly.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a lot of background to really understand what's being gotten at. Okay.
Oh, just going back to the root text of the three principal aspects of the path. Yesterday, were you saying that, was it in relation to verse 13, where you were saying that the first line is the Chittamatra point of view? Is it I'm not sure, you were saying there was one where one line is the Chittamatra view and the next line is the Madhyamaka view. And was that
I
verse?
didn't say it.
No? I
me.
heard wrongly.
But I really, we could look at I don't have a copy.
Oh.
But I don't think I said that. But Sonam Rinchen might have said it. I don't know. Okay. What I said was that for verse 13 that there are many translations of this, and sometimes they're translated just the opposite way. That is, when you know how appearances preclude the extreme of existence and emptiness precludes the extreme of nihilism, sometimes that's when you know how appearances preclude the extreme of emptiness and I can't do it. Sometimes this sentence is translated so that it asserts the opposite of what it asserts here. That's all I was saying. That translations differ on this. I don't think I named one as Chittamatra and Madhyamaka. Maybe I did. Maybe I say things I don't know. That could happen. I think from the first time I saw this text was in Geshe-Wanja, the Geshe-Wanja book, Door to Liberation. And I read it and I said, that's bad. This is too bad. It's just the opposite. The text is just the opposite of that. But it was published. You know, it's just so. And today, I think if you look at 3 or 4 versions, you might see one of them says it's translated totally the opposite. And that's unfortunate, since this is an important verse to get right. This one is right, I think, but sometimes I was just saying that sometimes it's translated just the opposite. Yes.
I'm curious, does Martin Luther King teaches about emptiness in his sermons?
No, he teaches about interdependence. That's more positive emptiness. You know, the self doesn't exist as a separate entity. We are interdependent with all things. And in a way, you can say that's emptiness. But he didn't focus on that notion. No. He emphasized, in other words, he emphasized our connectedness, which is a way of saying we don't exist uniquely and separate from other beings. So he had a more positive take on it. Is there another way to say this?
Just because somebody understands dependence doesn't mean they understand emptiness. So, yeah, people can speak a lot about dependence, and on a conventional level, people being dependent in society, we're dependent on each other, so we have to take care of each other. But that doesn't mean that person understands emptiness.
Right. And it doesn't mean that you have to be Buddhist to work for the welfare of beings. Let's say that. And this is Coretta Scott King, the forward of this. She's saying that Martin, her husband Martin, really saw the interrelated structure of reality. In his sermon, this sermon called "The Man Who Was a Fool," this is a famous quote from Martin Luther King. King said, "All men are men, sick and women, okay, humans, are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be, and you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be." Powerful, you know. He talked about the interdependence. That's the nature of reality. We need to act on that, and from that, out of that. Yeah. I highly recommend these sermons.
Not so much a question, but I was thinking about what you said yesterday, that in the last days of his last year of his life, Martin Luther King was quite lonely. For propounding what is a conventional truth, right? Even that scares people, that we are interdependent in this way. Like for people, I was just thinking about all these people in the 60s and when Southeast Asian countries were first gaining independence and were trying to work towards a genuine sense of interracial connection, many of whom went to jail or were killed, right? And that, eventually autocratic governments took over. Like it was too scary. I'm reading these letters by an Indonesian writer who was writing at the time of when they were trying to eliminate the Chinese population, and he's writing to a Chinese friend talking about how he can't stand for these things, and then he winds up in jail after that and detained for about 14 years, I think. So, just all these people standing up for conventional truth was already hard enough.
Yeah, absolutely, right.
To go back to the interdependence and emptiness distinction or commonality, I think, I used to like to think, everything is interconnected, interdependent, but that sort of assumes that there are actually things that exist that are then linked to one another. But actually what, emptiness is saying is that there is no discrete thing anywhere. So, it's I guess the two aren't synonymous exactly.
I think I'm sorry, go ahead, were you done?
Yeah, because I think, Eastern philosophy, well, people say, it's all about interconnectedness, realizing that interconnectedness. But it does have that connotation that there are discrete things out there that then influence each other. But Buddhist philosophy, my take is that, it's not that way. It's not that we think things exist individually, but actually, no, they exist linked to each other. It's that things don't exist how we think they exist. That is what is really the essence of how to look at things properly. So
Right.
just to draw out that distinction in case, because I hear it thrown around, people kind of use it interchangeably, but I don't know how strict or how fine of a line to draw between the two.
I think the similes are good for showing that even though we might be operating in a relative world where things aren't as they seem, they are still useful. People still suffer, and we have to act in the world. And even though that world, even though we might have only relative understanding, we still need to act in the world. Systems still operate. Those things still have meaning, even though we can see that they don't have substance behind them. We can still use them. So I don't have anything profound here to say, except that we live in a relative world until we know something about the ultimate one. And in this one, as bodhisattvas, if you take a bodhisattva vow, or if you don't take the vow, it's a good thing to care about each other. And when there are needs, to try as best as we can to help alleviate suffering in the here and now. To look at systems. One of the things Joanna Macy does is she talks about Indra's net as her way of talking about interdependence and interconnectivity. Indra's net, where every jewel reflects every other one, as a way of talking about this interconnectivity. And she's a great story. Her life, but too long. She's a great systems person. So she sees things holistically, and she talks about. I'm sorry, too many examples are coming in my mind. So from her Buddhism and her CIA work and her systems work, she's learned to give workshops that help people who are getting burned out from their work in the world, from their engaged Buddhist activity. She developed these workshops. She goes off, well, not so much now, she's in her 80s, but she would help people rejuvenate themselves who were engaged in work in the world. And she would also teach people how to see how one thing was connected to another, so they could get some insight on where might be the place to intersect to bring about change. I would highly suggest that you look at that might be good for here. Sometimes when I want to do this race and racism workshop, I'm going to use Joanna Macy's collection of exercises called Coming Back to Life. Always come back to life. But she gives you a way to come back with energy to work on things that need to be done to alleviate suffering. I don't know if I answered any of your question at all. But folks, here we are at the end. Oh, it's a wonderful little text. Didn't actually focus so much on that, but that was my idea a year ago. But then you can go there. You can talk a little bit about renunciation, because you can talk more about bodhicitta and a little bit about wisdom. But I think it was okay. I'm not asking for that, but I think it's good to have spent time with you discussing this text and the many subjects that come out of discussing this text or associated with this text. I thank you so much. You're great students. I like your comments. It's a wonderful place. I thank you so much, Venerable, for having me. And all of you guys for hosting me so well. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.